Welcome back to Your Story Medicine. Today, I am with Vanessa Codorniu, also known as the Biz Bruja on Instagram. She is an acclaimed psychic medium with 25 years of experience and more than 10,000 individual sessions. She is most definitely a Bruja and Latinx teacher of intuition and clinical hypnosis with a focus on healing ancestral trauma through hypnosis. She created her school to stand for diversity, inclusivity, and accessibility for underrepresented BIPOC communities and hopes to continue supporting the next generation of leaders and healers for generations to come. I'm so excited to have this conversation because it is so rare for me to meet other folks, especially women of color, who can talk about all things witchy, ancestral, and business. So, welcome, Vanessa, to Your Story Medicine.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you, to meet with you, and to have this really multi-layered and very exciting conversation.
Ooh, and as always, I love to start off by asking my guests, what are you celebrating about yourself today?
Mm. I am celebrating that I look out into my life and everything that at some point or another I felt I didn't have is now full. Like my garden is full. I have the love that I wanted. I have the business that I wanted. I have the health that I wanted, the community, the friends. And that's what I'm celebrating today as I prepare for my wedding. That even though I went through a lot of loss last year, that all of the work is paid off, all of the trust is paid off, all of the surrender is paid off, right? So that's what I'm celebrating, like the fullness of
Yeah.
like all of it, and so grateful. So grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm like fourth year into this journey. And I was recently reading my journal from 2017 when I first started my business. And it was just so wild to see that the spells I casted for myself, like I wrote my future self as if she was already here. And this past month, well, June 2021, I turned 34. And oh my gosh, it was like check, 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 check. And reading these entries, I'm like, I remember this time in my life where the life I have created today seemed so far out of reach. And I felt like a total imposter along the way.
Happy birthday. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
imposter. Yes, we can talk about those things. Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
And
you're able to read them. Like you're able to read.
thank you. Thank you. And so it's like, for me, I see spelling as a spell.
Yes.
And so, how's it that we're writing our future selves into existence? So, if you can strip away your titles, how is it that you would describe your medicine?
Hmm. I am I am a combination of all of my ancestors' sacred medicine brought into this modern day world as a student, a teacher, a mirror, and a lover of humanity. I know that sounds out there, but I think that it includes all of it. As I alchemize myself, I help alchemize the world. And so I think that I've been able to take the time that my ancestors couldn't. My mom a little, but she raised four kids and was very busy, to be able to access my gifts and not hide them. And so, yeah, I'm answered to their prayers. And I am a bruja and I'm an alchemist. And also I'm a discoverer and explorer. Nothing is set in stone. And you said about spellings or spells. To me, the bruja part, like with the hypnosis or with any words that I use, I am creating spells. Because if you think about hypnosis, you're bringing somebody in through words and energy. And the words that we use for ourselves is how we manifest and create and perceive our reality within and without. And the more we unpack all the layers of what we're not and choose our stories, like you said, and write ourselves into existence. And so, first and foremost, I see myself as that, as my medicine is that of being a product of all of this goodness, finally incarnating in a time where things are possible, and that I'm doing it, and that I'm doing it, and I'm helping others
Mhm.
do it. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. I feel one of the other things that we have in common is how much of our younger years was more focused on external change, like fighting the system and believing that that was the way to create ripples. And not to say that we don't need that work, but how truly effective is it if we are not going backwards, if we are not looking within? So, share with us more about your ancestral lineage and how this has influenced the ways that you're showing up today.
Thank you so much for that question. On my mother's side of the family, there's a lot of European folks who traveled from country to country. I think that back in the day they were Jewish and they traveled from country to country. They changed their names. This is what I found when I looked. And then they came into Argentina already in the 1920s. And they came into Argentina. But they were the ones who taught me about Espiritismo, right? And that there's spirit in everything. They taught me about cleansing. They taught my mom about cleansing. We had an altar shelf. Like we had a place where we honored our ancestors. Stories of our families were passed down from generation to generation, their struggles, how they overcame it, like the things that they went through. And so even as a little kid, like I would like just know the stories and honor them, you know, and light a candle and pray. On my father's side of the family, my grandmother was indigenous, but given up for adoption at a young age. And so she didn't know, but I saw her struggles. I saw other people running to tan and her hiding from tanning. I saw other people trying to straighten their hair while she tried to curl it because it was so straight. I saw herself almost ashamed of her incredibly beautiful high cheekbones. And, you know, and my mom's like, thank God you have some of that, you know. But then I would see other people wanting what she had, but also her doubting her beauty. And I also saw her ability to be a medium. I saw my grandfather, who also came from a mixed background, Catalunya, right? Catalan, that's my last name is Catalan, very mixed background also, and saw him exploring hypnosis and exploring speaking to guides. And so from a young age, my intuition was honored. Like if I came up to my grandparents and was like, I have a bad feeling, there's this man with a blue shirt and a gray car, he's mean, they would kind of look out and then would be on the street and there would be a guy in a gray shirt and a blue car who was screaming. They were like, oh, that's what you were talking about. So no one ever said, you're crazy, you're weird, you're wrong. As I got older though, so we were already doing limpias, which are like the, you know, Spanish and indigenous cleansings with the egg. My mom would line us all up. We'd go to the beach and do a special baño and a special cleanse. She would boil, you know, the different herbs as a kid. And so this was a way of life for me. Like, yes, we prayed to God, but it was something more earthy, more connected, and more, my mom would say, God is within you. Your ancestors are with you, your angels are with you. And I think it's so one of the things that happened that changed my life was that around 16, I think we talked about it briefly. I told my mom, well, there's this Ouija board going around. And I went to High School of the Arts, by the way, in Manhattan, right? So I was an artist. You have to audition to get into that school. So I was there and I was like, Mom, she was like, bring it home. We're going to experiment. So I brought it home. She blindfolds me, which is like, what? You know, she flips it around. And like, I knew I was intuitive to that point, more like messages from the other side and, you know, precognition. But suddenly, well, blindfolded, I saw a woman with red hair, a little boy coming out of the water, dripping water. And they were like, take care of Willie, tell him I love him. That was my dad's name. And I was like, why is this woman who's dripping wet from a water, like a body of water, telling my mother this? And I saw a woman very austere with buttoned up shirt, dressed in black, very like serious. Tell your cousin not to go to work on this day of this month of this time, blah, blah, blah. Then another man came through with a big plumed hat and he spoke with this heavy Spaniard accent, like it was like a th sound. And he's like, I've tried to come through to you, Marie Cris, my mother's name, but you didn't let me and I was going to help you be a writer in this world. And I was like, what? So my mom's like, take off the blindfold. I took it off. She said, don't move, just stay here. She went and brought a framed picture of my dad, opened the back, pulls out a picture of a woman with this reddish hair behind my dad, hidden. We'd never known about her. She goes, she was his ex-girlfriend. She died in a car accident with her son. She was already married to somebody. She married somebody else. She goes, and she loved him so much, it would make sense she would come through to you. So at 16, I was like, oh my God, some deceased person just came through. I saw her, I heard her, I felt her. And then I was like, who's the man with the plumed hat? She goes, well, when I was 17, a man with a plumed hat came to me when I was sleeping, telling me, I am your guide, I will help you. And she screamed and went, no, and jumped up out of the bed and was like, no, 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 no. And so she did become a journalist and wrote a lot of poetry, but I think didn't accomplish like the heights that he wanted to take her to in terms of him. but she also got married at 25 and retired. So, and so she was like, I know that man, what you're talking about. And then with my great, she said, that sounds like your great grandmother. And she's coming into Warren on that side. So we called Argentina. She's like, I'm going to cover for you because it's going to sound weird if we talk about the Ouija board. So they believed in things, but they didn't believe in the Ouija. They didn't like that. She called and goes, I had a dream that on this day of this day, this cousin cannot go to work, Gustavo. He's passed away now. And the month came and that he didn't go. And there was a robbery in the store. Nobody died. Somebody got shot in the leg, but he wasn't there. So he was sick that day. So it worked out. And so that was at 16. And so my dad was like, read me on my business. So I read him on his business. I didn't know what I was saying. It felt really hard. I felt like, how am I knowing this information when I don't know anything about business? I don't know anything about life. I'm only 16. And then he just started bringing me a lot of business people. And so what wound up happening is I realized that 16, how intertwined like our spirituality and what we're feeling and what we think intertwines into our business. But then one day I was like, I lost my powers. I don't have them. It was not true. I was like, I want this anymore. I was like, can I be a kid? And so at 22 as an event coordinator, I dressed up to go to a big event in New York. And when I arrived there, a psychic said, sit down. I want to warm up with you. And there I was in this like dyed blonde hair, pulled tight, in this little black outfit with my black stockings and black heels, all ready to do my thing. And she goes, wow, this is not who you are. She goes, you live you live two lives, she said. When you walk in your house, you're a healer, a bruja, curandera. She goes, you have candles, you pray, you cleanse people, you cleanse yourself. And then you come to work and you've got this like veneer of success, like what you think you need to be. I started crying and she goes, I promise you this, one day it will be one. She goes, your sacred work and your priestess self and your witch self will be your work. And I was like, what? Because it was, over 27 years ago. And so that was the thing. And then she brought me into an agency that hired me. And so I would have a full-time day's work and then go do events and book launches and penthouse events and other things like that through the agency. And so, but that thing that happened when I was 16 was huge. It was huge. And I soon started to have past life regression sessions and went to Argentina very scared to talk to my grandparents about it, though they were cool. And when I started telling them I was shaking, I was sad, and my grandfather was laughing, my mom's dad. And he called my grandmother, who's deceased now. She was like, Cecilia, she thinks she invented it, And I'm like, no, I don't think I invented it. I'm just scared. And she came over, she goes, oh, did you tell them about the Japanese life? And I was like, no, what Japanese life? So they started telling me how they were both having these dreams years ago where she was walking on little wooden shoes over a little bridge with these pink flowers. Now, back in that time, we didn't have television shows that showed you Japanese life. Right now we have everything at our fingertips. And so she said she wrote everything down and they went to a library and like looked everything up. And they were both really shocked that they felt like they had known each other in a life and they were Japanese together. And so, they were telling me these things about their guides. And so it was mind blowing. And I thought, okay, I'm all right. I'm safe.
Wow. There's so much coming up for me right now because more recently, I feel like I've been going backwards to that time in my life as a young teenager when I realized that there was this other realm that existed. And I don't really talk about this on my platform, in my business, but my first experience with the Ouija board told me that there are definitely spirits around us. And I know that I was so protected. I was so protected because I would see things happening to other people. But I don't know if it's like karma or something, my ancestors, my guides, no harm ever came my way of just like getting a glimpse into the spirit realm. And it was a lot of darkness that I saw as people were playing with this. And it made me realize that if there is that much darkness that exists, there's also just as much light. And so I feel like it's only been more recently, these past couple of years, where I have been learning to hone into the light, to recognize that I am a light warrior. And also, I think it's so easy for people to listen to your story and to believe to believe that, oh, Vanessa must be special, or oh, June must be gifted and I'm not, or oh, well, I don't know my ancestral lineage, and I don't know if there's any healers where I come from. And it's like, this is ancestral to all of us. So I know that the school you've created, the School of the Healing Arts, exists to awaken the healer within each and every single one of us. So tell us more about what inspired you to create this.
Thank you so much. And I agree with you completely. We do not have to come from an exotic place. We do not have to have a wild name or a wild background or inherited like a million, psychic mediums. We all have it. It is just about allowing it to flow through us and release that, the colonized hold of propriety or what is correct or being crazy or not being, or what does this mean? Or losing touch. Some of us have a fear of losing touch with the everyday world. So something that really inspired me to create the School of Healing Artists was that I spent almost 20 years in Sweat Lodge studying with a Lakota teacher, Beverly Little Thunder, her daughter Lushanya, and that I spent almost 20 years attending and teaching also at Where Women Gather, or Woman Gathering it was called. And it's a festival, women's festival, where the heartbeat would be like women would take turns drumming and it would be a heartbeat throughout the whole weekend. It would never stop because one woman would start the heartbeat, the other one would rest. The sacred fire would go on. This was beautiful. And what I learned that when we are in a supportive community, how we thrive, how we heal. Every time I went there, I felt like I was in Holy Land and I would release things and come out stronger. And I was like, well, now that, so what happened is I've been teaching online, offline a long time, online 9 years. And last year during the pandemic, around March, April, is several of my coaching clients fell off, right? And I saw this change in my business because the coaching clients were always the ones that, they're the ones who pay in the beginning of the month or pay in advance, and that covers all of your overhead. And then everything else, like a course or whatever, is extra, etc. And suddenly they fell off. And I sat there and I just went to spirit and I'm like, how can I best serve? How can I continue to work? And it was like, do a pay what you can, Reiki, and do this because there's so many people who do not have access, have not had access, and many people of color and many Latinx, and many folks who really need this now more than ever because the anxiety levels and people are getting sick and they don't know and they're worried and some people don't have health care. And so when I stepped out into the Reiki, pay what you can, I created the School of Healing Artists. And then under that, I did Nacimos Magicos, Born Magical, which is an eight-week program. I taught it under a different name that I never liked, Intuitive Leverage, that a business coach told me to do. So famous, well-known business coach said, use intuitive leverage, get all the people from the business world, the corporate world, which kind of happened,
Ah,
but it didn't, like the word leverage didn't feel good. I know what
yeah.
it means. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But then one day as I was praying and meditating on that, um, not only did the Pay What You Can Reiki come through, but it was the School of Healing Artists. And then it came through to do Nacimos Magicos, Born Magical. And there were people who are like, oh, Vanessa, some people who read that name may not sign up because they're going to be like, Nacimos Magicos, what is that? I'm like, Born Magical is right next to it. They could read it. It's not a course in Spanish, but I wanted to honor my bilingual roots and honor like that we can be two things or more than one, two things. And so when it was born, it was just such a gift because honestly, I've always had amazing students and clients. The level and the quality of kindness, of power, of gift. I would say every race or every cultural background, not every, because I guess there's so many on earth, but that I know of has attended. But I would say white is in the minority. And when people write me and say, can I join? I'm like, of course you can, as long as you are inclusive and honor diversity and are open to, but it's been so incredible to just see people shine. And so I've seen other people already step out of the school, creating their breathwork systems, creating meditation, creating other things. And it's just, I want to support the next generation. I haven't seen it. I stepped out. I remember going to Where Women Gather, and out of 500 women, there were maybe 3 women of color. And it wasn't like they did it on purpose. And then we all said, we've got to bring in more. So my family was in Miami. So I was like, everybody, I told my sister, get people on a bus, whatever. So they rented this whole big thing. And all the Latinas from Miami drove all the way to like Pennsylvania, New York. And we made an effort to bring in more women of color in different backgrounds. But I feel like from what I've heard is like people need to feel like somebody understands them and shares their story and is also aware of their own privilege, like I am, and always growing, right? Because there are things that maybe I don't know. Just when you have something, you don't know sometimes that it's a privilege, so you have to learn. And that's what pushed me to create this. And it's been one of the greatest joys of my life, I have to say. And people within the school have stepped up and been like, I just want to support you. And so now I have like even students showing up, answering questions, right? And doing things. And the most wonderful thing is that Reiki students were able to, 21 of them stepped into being master teachers. And so many of them are going to be teaching for the school in the fall. And so it
Yeah.
was just like, how do we do this? You know, each one teach one, each one heal one. We heal ourselves, we heal others. Like I wanted it to be, it was also a legacy. Like, what do we leave
Mhm.
behind?
Yep.
And so for me, after all these years, I was like, you know, the school might dissolve after I pass or when I get older. The ripple effect of the mission, though, continues in different names and different guises, different faces, different places. And I wanted that. And so, and I'm just telling you, they're so, I remember when I had all the losses last year, the messages I got from people. And it was like so much love. And I got more love, I think, sometimes from students and clients than people who were my friends who didn't know how to deal, because
Yeah.
losing a mom, a dad, and a younger brother on top of other, I lost clients as well, and I lost a teacher. Um, it's very overwhelming for people because they're scared of losing their own. But I found my students like, Maestra, we need you. Get your rest, Maestra. Like, we love you. They were like, Mujer, rest. I'm like, okay, I'm taking the day off. So it was really something that came through me, but it was also for me and for others.
Yeah.
And I think the best of our creations and offers work for us and others. They're not one
Mhm.
sided.
Yeah, I also find that there's a lot of ownership that happens in this industry, who's allowed to say or use what, when I believe that creativity is just an energy that is also transferred from one person to another. And it is also important to not be appropriating somebody's work, to give credit where it's due, to pay homage to your lineage, to your teachers. But I also feel like there's so many of us who are still in that scarcity and hoarding information or knowledge or people or even money, that even for you to offer a pay what you can when you are not getting consistent income can sound like it's something that's counterintuitive to what many people in the industry may say. So, what would you say to somebody who is telling you you shouldn't give away your stuff for free, or you shouldn't do sliding scale, or you shouldn't do pay what you can?
I think that there's room. I think there's room for everything. So there's room for a certain group of folks or a certain program or a certain thing where if you want to charge a higher amount, go ahead. And I think that there's room for speaking for free. I've heard people say to me, well, I'm not going to speak here for free. I'm not going to speak there for free. You know, I've been online 9 years, successfully online, and I've been offline also, right? Supporting myself before I came on here. And I'm always listening to spirit of where I'm guided. And I didn't even question it. And I will tell you that I still had $30,000 months. Now, there were some people who might go, well, 30,000 is not a lot. She should make, because there's always going to be somebody. I didn't want to do more than that. I was good with that, and then there were the months when people dropped out. And so I think that there's room for everything. My first level is a pay what you can. My second one is still less than what I paid like 16, 17 years ago for level 2. My third level is less than what I paid 15 years ago. But it was more about how do I serve people, enable people to get out there and use this beautiful Japanese technique, bring it out when we need it the most. And then Nacimos Magicos, I'll tell you, when I first brought it out, it was 597, but I only brought in 18 people. 78 people came into Nacimos Magicos at 220. So you're still making
Yeah.
what, $60,000 for a class. And so what I want to share with folks is that there's still a way for things to happen. Now, people have also said to me, Vanessa, you shouldn't be doing so much in person live. You can record. I said, well, I've done that before. But I think one of the things of the magic sauce with me and maybe all of us is being live. And I also love it too. So I'm excited. So I think that there's room for everything. There's something that people say a lot, which is charge your worth. I get stumped with that because I think I'm priceless.
Absolutely.
There's really no amount. And then you're like, okay, I'm a spirit on earth. I got to kind of
Mhm.
work with what's happening. I'm going to create this amount, but it's still a created amount. I don't think that I'm worth 220 for 8 weeks. Okay. It's not that. It's like, how can I create this, make it affordable through payment plans, yet still have the income? And by the way, I was guided to do that because I was going to go higher and have less people. I didn't know my brother was going to pass at the time. My intuition said, Vanessa, go lower. You're going to need this income and you're going to need time off from one-on-one sessions. The fact that I was able to lower rates, bring in more people, then my brother passed. We bought a house. We were moving 4 days after he passed. It was crazy. And I'm
Mhm.
sitting there like, oh my God, like still in shock. But yet I was completely held on my business end. Right. And so I think we need to really develop our intuition and not go by these strict rules. I mean, if you're someone who's always like not wanting to charge, that's something else. And we may need to clear some things. But I think that from an empowered place, it's okay to be like, you know what, this level of whatever I'm offering is going to be a pay what you can. Like somebody told me last year, don't speak at the shift network because they're not paying you. Right. Well, that was ridiculous because I think there were like 60 or 70,000 people that actually see each summit. Their mailing list is huge. I loved it. I love talking on that thing. And now I've been invited to be a co-host, right? So, and that is a paid opportunity. So it's like there are doors that you can only walk through, maybe for free, but I wouldn't see it as anybody's using me. I would see it as I'm seeding seeds. We're
Yep.
always planting seeds wherever we go, whether it's a podcast, whether it's an article. I also wrote an article and then it didn't have a home. I offered it to a magazine online. They published it for free. And they wrote me and said, we'd like to give you a contribution opportunity to pay you. And that wound up turning into income. And so there's so many things that you could walk in. I think I offered myself to speak to a school once. After that, hired it like top dollar. But it was that
Yeah.
one time that I said yes. But I think that we have to tap into ourselves and see what's in alignment. And so there are ways, and there's going to be free things that you do. There may be a free, like 1 hour opportunity where people get to know you. It could be a podcast, so it could be something else. I also want to say, like, for the school itself, I wanted to do something that I didn't have with a lot of my teachers. But that's also because my training was years ago, right? My hypnosis was 22 years ago. My Reiki was like 15 years ago. Was that I wanted to create spaces where people would still have continued support. So my Reiki circle is free. And I don't think that it's like it's no detriment to me because now I have Reiki teachers who are answering questions. And there's a home where if somebody's having a problem going, I had a divorce today, or I've lost my kid, or whatever, in a course dealing, or, divorce court dealing, or I'm having a low day with my self-esteem. We're like, hey, sis, you want some Reiki? When I had COVID, I was like, hey, people, anybody want to send me some Reiki? My partner and I are open. He said yes. So boom, they sent it. We had pretty mild symptoms. And so we have a home where if somebody has a question, because I felt with a lot of my trainings, I went through training, then I was thrown out into the world and I had to like paddle around and be like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so I didn't want that. And so people could say, well, you could charge for that. I could, but you know what? I'm not there enough. It's a community based thing. So I think that there's a way to have community based. And then I did something else in my school. Like I wanted to serve community. So I asked all of the students who were level 2, actually not all of them because there are many of them. I had 30 students show up, sign up, and then I had 30 strangers. I got them on a Zoom call and then I put them into rooms and it was free. And I did that twice. And then I said, for the future, maybe I'll have like a $5 donation in the future to cover the Zoom, to cover a student who does this for me. But I wanted to do it. So I think we need to check within ourselves too. I don't perceive it as I'm suffering, I'm a martyr, I'm giving things away. I was like, hey, people who right now may not know what Reiki is, and this is a free opportunity with some of the students who want to show up and practice. You want to do it? I'll be here. It brought me joy. So I think we need to check in with ourselves. Now,
Yeah.
like me having to travel somewhere and pay for everything and have to do everything for free, not so much.
Hmm.
Not so much. And I have actually done things like that in the past. But then it's amazing when they call you and write you, like, we're going to pay for your this, we're going to pay for the flight, and that's great. And so I think we need to check with ourselves. I don't think it's a hard no or a hard yes.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I I find that being able to tell our stories and connect with people first before being attached to whether or not they're going to give us money is how we can come from that place of abundance. And there was a meme I remember that was floating around, which was saying, you need to charge me for my time. Like there's people who charge for these like connection calls. And for me, it's like, especially as Black, Indigenous, people of color, especially as women who may not have come from economic privilege, there is so much trauma and so many stories that are tied to money that it's like when I am giving you money in exchange for a service, it's also like, do I trust you? And so I have found so much value in creating that connection first, in easing people's nervous systems to let them know that it is safe. I know that you may have been taken advantage of before. And also, I'm not responsible for what's going to happen. Like, this is an energetic commitment for you to show up and do this work. Whereas otherwise, you may be spending this money on other things to cover up for the other feelings that you're avoiding inside. And
Yeah.
so I also want to know, why do you feel like it's so important for us to talk about both ancestral healing and entrepreneurship? Because usually those things don't exist in the same sentence. And you're one of the other few people who actually does combine those two, like me.
Yeah, I love it. And I love what you said too about, before I answer that question, I want to share something. So I had a woman who felt like she'd been taken advantage of a lot. She'd paid $20,000 to one. She was already
Mm,
in debt up to her ears, Latina woman of color. And she was just like, I and her friends pushed her to me and she goes, Vanessa, I can't pay another 20,000. I can't. And so I got on a quick call with her and she cried. I held space for her. It was only a 20-minute call. She
mhm.
took the course. She loved it. It wasn't 20,000. She recommended it to 10 more people. She's like, "You're real." My teacher, I paid so much money, they weren't there for me. And that's where I also want to balance myself as I grow. How do I grow in a way where I'm not requiring so much money from people and I'm not there for them?
Mhm.
Do I then hire people so they could be there for them? I think that there's a lot to think of. I think that it's not just about, oh, I'm making bank, I made a million. Well, how did you do it? How did you make bank? Are these people walking around fulfilled? I mean, and you can't please everyone all of the time, obviously, but we want to, like, I think, do the work that we say that we're doing. If you were holding space, then we have to hold space.
No, I'm telling you, I know I've seen so many coaches who brag about the money they've made, but then what about the people? What about the impact? And I've spoken to some of these people who have been through those containers talking about how there was barely any connection. There was way too many people involved to where they didn't feel seen. And at the end of the day, it's about being seen, heard, and felt, right? Does this person care about me and my dreams? And I've also been in experiences where other teachers or coaches are like, you need better boundaries. And yes, while that is true, I also know that I thrive on human connection.
Me too.
And when people feel safe, they will trust you more, and they won't feel like they need to be in your DMs 24/7 because they know that you've got them. And also, like, for me to be in a place where I can be in Hawaii and I can like be on the beach and know that my clients are actually celebrating me for
Yes.
resting tells me that I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm embodying what it is I also want for them.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love that you're in Hawaii. When I first created my business, I spent time in Panama and in Costa Rica. And so I was like out there and like I was like, I cannot believe I'm going up to the house now to get on for sessions and then coming back to the beach. It's amazing. And so talking about ancestral and business, why it's so important. It is really important because I feel that in the process of colonization throughout time, and I believe that we're all colonized people, some more than
Mm-hmm.
others, right? Some more than others. And we were taken away from our natural instincts. You know, our ancestors, like way back in the day, made their own stuff. They made their own huts, they made their own rugs. And maybe the guy who's really good at rugs or the woman who was really good at rugs made them. And the other person's like, I'm good at hats. I'll trade you a hat for a rug. And so I think our natural instinct was to be creators, and because we are. And as time came on and we started to work for others and think that our money and our safety depended on working for the man or the woman or whoever it may be, or the organization, that we started to let go of our own resourcefulness, of our own resilience. And if our ancestors teach us anything, is how resourceful and how resilient they were, because that's why you and I are here talking today, because our ancestors were hella resistant and resilient and resourceful to travel through those continents, travel through those countries, through those time frames, historical experiences. And so for me, it's really important. I want to be really transparent that I did not set out to be an entrepreneur. There were entrepreneurs on both sides. My dad was an entrepreneur, came here at 17 to the United States, worked in a factory, worked like 18, 20 hours sometimes to bring his whole family over. My grandmother worked in a factory as well, and then also was cleaning homes. And my grandpa worked in different jobs, right, to survive. My mom stayed home with the kids, and my family in Argentina, her side, stayed there. And what I saw in my parents was that my dad worked so many jobs and he didn't complain. At some point, he got an opportunity to create a business, and he did. And he didn't know anything about it, and it was high-end jewelry. So it wasn't like a ring for 200, it was like 200,000, which was like, what? Like, it was really freaky to see like these. And my dad and his brother created a business, became very successful. But the thing that I always learned about my dad was very much like money comes and goes in a way, he would say.
Mhm.
It would be like, it can always come. It will go out because there are things that need, and we need to keep it flowing, he would say. He wasn't a great saver, I do have to admit. So that's the other part that I'm learning and I've learned. My mom, I remember her wanting to have some extra money. And she just went and bought fabrics, bought paint, created dresses. She wasn't like the best artist, by the way, but she created these dresses. And then she invited some of her friends who were already like modelly, right? If they weren't models, they were modelly, and what modelly is perceived as. And she did a whole little show at her house and sold dresses. And then with that money that she made, and then she had the production. And I remember being a little kid, like sewing. My mom was Marie Cris, and I called myself Vani Cris, right? Because Christina's my middle name. Sewing dresses and being like, oh, I want to sew my little dresses too. But what I saw in my parents was like, well, there's something we can do. There's something we can do. But I also saw an empowerment of not having to wait for a check. And so my dad was like, I don't have to wait for this client to do this because I'm going to go do this. And so why I think it's so important is because a lot of us either have been taught we just have to work all the time for someone else, that we have to go by those rules, that we can't trust our inner self, we can't trust our inner gifts. And then what happens is when we lose our job, we become almost paralyzed. You know, every time I was laid off, and I did get laid off and things closed down, I would be like, readings, hypnosis, Reiki, voiceover work at one point in Spanish and English, like all this stuff. And I find that also just brought me so much joy, because when we're able to tap into our gifts and get paid for them, work does not become, oh, it's Monday. Like, I
Yeah.
don't relate to that at all, because sometimes I do teach on weekends, but it becomes joyful because it's something you already love. And so it's really
Mhm.
important for us. I don't think everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. I do believe that everyone has a gift, a soul gift, an ancestral gift that can bring them joy, whether it's full-time, part-time, as a hobby. And so that's why I think it's so important, because I know we've been taught to hide, right? So there's a visibility issue when it comes to business. We've been taught not to be too big for our britches, some families, not all, especially women. No, you got to stay home, you got to do the thing. And so I think that the path of sacred business is the path of liberation, reclamation, and financial freedom and creative expression.
Yes, that is why I like to replace the word business with legacy, because it's so much more than just about business. It's so much more than about making money. Like, yes, we need money to thrive in this capitalistic society, but most importantly, do you feel abundant? Do you feel whole in the process? Because there's a whole lot of people who have a whole bunch of money but still feel scarce, but still are not in alignment. And some of the people who you will meet that are feeling the most abundant and joyful may have very little. And why can't it be both? And so it has been in the months where I have had $0 coming in at times, or I have felt the most abundant because I just trusted, or maybe I had a launch and there was already money in the bank account. And so I already planned for that period of rest. And in that trust, and in my place of being able to serve my students, my clients from this overflow, I know that it'll naturally ripple out into the people they will recommend to be in the next sacred container it is I create. And so for me, this is what liberation looks like. It's what it feels like. It's about embodying what is possible for the next generation while also learning the tools from our ancestors and preserving it and like letting go of this narrative that just because we are women, because we are people of color, because we may not have come from economic privilege, that we can change that story.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so
Yeah.
happy we're here.
Thank
Something that
you.
came through is that for me, for also for anyone listening, and maybe for you as well, for me, it was also like I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur, but it was like, I want to be a healer and I want to be a healer in this way. Oh, it's not in the New York Times job section. All right. It's not here. It's not there. Like what I wanted to be was not anywhere that I could see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, well, I'm going to have to create it. And that's why I said I'm an
Yep.
explorer too, of stepping out and creating the way I work, even in the coaching. I do a natal chart, I do hypnosis, I do different tools that I use that are part of my gifts, and I'm free to do it. There's no
Yeah.
one standing over me going, no, you can't do that tool because it's not under this licensing or whatever, and there's that freedom of, or calling in a ceremony or doing a ritual or just being called to do a full moon event, even though you weren't going to do it, but suddenly you want to do it. Now you can do it. And so, and I wanted to say something else too. I can sometimes do things. I can do things for free at times because my cup is full. That's the
Mm-hmm.
name you were speaking,
Yes.
right? When I feel abundant in my body, in my life, in my sacred work, in my support, like I feel supported by spirit, my ancestors. That's why I can do something free, because I don't feel like it's anything that's being taken from me. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm walking in head full, and then I'm in there and I'm like, hey, connecting. And then I'm receiving it, and then I'm walking out even fuller, and people have asked me, they're like, Vanessa, how could you do what you did last year with all like losing your parents and your brother? And I was like, how could I not? That was my
Mm-hmm.
response that came from my family. Literally, I felt them on the other side, like, go, go, go. Do not use it
Yeah.
as an excuse. Do not use this as an excuse for not doing what you were born to do. We love you and we're here. We're always here for you. And so I felt this like wave that I was riding, that were my new ancestors who had just crossed over, just going,
Mm-hmm.
oh, go, we're with you. And so
Mm.
we can tap into that strength even if there's grief.
I feel you on that. And for those of you who have been listening to the podcast, you may know that my mother was on the brink of becoming an ancestor, which was one of the reasons why I actually extended my stay in Hawaii. And it felt very selfish in the beginning, but the doctors told me I couldn't do anything while she was in isolation. And the download I got while I was in deep meditation at this spiritual center in the woods, in the forest, was a message from my grandmothers, my great grandmothers, the ones who I had never met. And they said to me, it's okay. We will welcome her when she's ready to come home. And that just brought so much comfort to my heart. And so for me, that is the beauty of being able to approach our work from a decolonial lens, from being able to connect with our ancestors, that trust that we are always being divinely guided. And what is the work I am doing in this lifetime? And what is it that people will say about me when I become a future ancestor, or who are the lives that I get to impact, whether they are of my blood lineage or chosen. And so I would love to know, what is it that you have been doing to stay grounded in these times? And also, what is it that you have learned to release?
Mm. What I've been doing in these times is connecting more to nature. We wound up moving to a city in Pennsylvania, but the house that we bought is right in a park. And it's a park that honors nature. So it's like, I guess, a reserve. And so I connect with nature as much as possible. I've always had plants in my apartments in New York City. And so that's the thing that's kept me grounded, is literally being in nature. I think that I one of my goals many years ago, because I had a vision, I got a message saying that my parents and my brother would pass pretty close. I asked that I already have love in my life, like a stable, long-term love. Like that was what I wanted from spirit. I was like, I've given all my life. My relationships haven't always worked out for many reasons and they weren't meant to. But I was like, I really wanted that. So spending time with someone that we're not necessarily talking about work, spending time with somebody that I love who isn't necessarily talking about past lives or ancestors, or you're just living. So I think there's a need to be a balance, right? Where, like, as people say to me, "Oh, how could you be with somebody who's, is an atheist, doesn't?" But I was like, but he does call himself an empath, right? And I wrote an article called "Can Spiritual Women Date Like Muggles?" or something, like dating muggles or something. But that makes it real, like focus on the food, like the grounding, literally. Or he looks at me because you're not resting enough. Let's go take a walk. So the part, first of all, nature, and then having close relationship, where it doesn't have to mean sometimes we don't have a love relationship at that moment. It could be a friendship where you talk about other things. Because I can easily talk about spiritual stuff and business stuff and growth stuff all day long
Ugh,
and never
ugh.
get tired. I never get tired. He says to me, he says, I don't, because I could hear sometimes, and I hear your people are such distress. I could hear through the door a little bit, but you walk out and you're like, ow, dancing, dancing. Like I walk out like dancing. And
Yeah.
he's like, how? And I go, because I'm helping. I'm holding space for healing. I said, it's not a hopeless situation. There's a ripple effect going on. And I'm a little part of it. And it's helping. And so I think that, the basics, nature and being held, loved, hugged, being with people who care about you, not talking about your stuff all the time, and celebrating your part. Because I think people get caught up in, I want to do it all. It's one little bit, and that little bit goes into something else and goes into something else. And it's a combined community ripple effect, We can't do it all ourselves. So those are the
Yes.
things that have kept me. And what was the second question? Because I forgot it
Oh,
already.
yeah, yeah. And what is it that, well, and yeah, just going back to celebration, right? Because it's so easy to get caught up in the next thing versus celebrating where it is you already are. And the second part was, what is it that you've learned to release or you're learning to release in this process?
I had a really great lesson. So I had there's an ancestral thing in my family. My mom had a TV show stolen. My dad had a couple of business things happen to him. So my mom was always pushing me forward to write and create and do things. My dad was always afraid, oh, they're going to steal it from you. And I'd be like, Dad, I have to put it out. If it happens, it happens. I've had stuff stolen before. Last year, somebody stole a link and had 3.5 thousand downloads in 5 days of something that I created that was in a course. I know. So it was a student, right? I couldn't track it because Mighty Networks didn't help with that. And in the past, I would have been heartbroken. I would have been so betrayed. I would have been like, oh my God. I got on immediately on Instagram, did a story, shared the story. And then I was like, and I'm letting this go. And the
Yes.
person who did this, like, learn it. And so that was a big thing. And another thing was seeing folks that I knew weren't doing the work, lying about doing the work online. So that was something that used to bother me a lot. Maybe it's because I'm a generator, so it's like I feel like I have to do it the hard way all the time.
Yeah.
Even though people are like, "You're a manifestor. You say one thing and it happens." I'm like, "Oh, I was working behind the scenes on it," and so I had to release the whole thing of, "Wow, this person just studied this thing, and then went out and got this huge speaking gig, but they don't really know because I know them and they just studied the thing last weekend because they knew people and they got it." So there's so much more to succeeding than, like, a student said to me, well, I'll never be on the cover of a magazine. And I'm like, I want to be honest with you. I know people who pay people to be on cover of magazines. So that's not what you think it is. So
Yep.
releasing, right, you know what I'm talking about. So releasing the idea that this public recognition or the upset if I know somebody's lying about something, because the truth is that it doesn't touch my work. So that was something I had to release, the stealing and the BS around that, and being like, well, God bless them. Lo que pase, pase, whatever happens, I'm going to keep thriving. And so what happened is that let me keep growing, because I wasn't sitting there mourning about it for 5 billion days. It was like, oh, it sucks. Okay, what else are we going to create?
Yes.
And then the second part of, like, everybody has their journey. I can't know what their journey is and their story is and what brought them to that. And if you are lying about anything in your business, what happens is you're going to feel bad about it eventually. Because if you're not in the sessions and you're saying you had thousands of sessions, it's going to show eventually at some point. And so I had to let that go. And I'm like, I'm just in my space. I'm in my work, flowing and growing. And I always reach out to people. I'm like, hey, I don't know if you thought of this, but I see this. And they're like, I think this could help you. They're like, oh my God, I didn't know about that. And then it's like just flowing in my own joy and not even peering over somebody else's garden unless it is to support. It's just like I had to let it go.
Yes.
Because I've seen a lot of BS. I've been around like
Mhm.
a lot of Hay House people and other things. Not to put them down, because some of them are amazing, but I worked with some many years ago, and some things happened that were not cool.
Yeah, another episode.
Yeah.
So, if you can give people words of wisdom or a ritual to set them on their journey towards ancestral healing and creating their own legacies, what would that be?
Well, many people who listen may already have this. I think it's really important to set up a space in your home. I don't care if it's on top of a dresser or in
Yeah.
a corner of your desk, if it's your window shelf, set up a session, a section somewhere, or maybe many places where you have at least one photo of a recent ancestor or a past ancestor. If you don't have photos, pick a rock, pick a leaf, pick something that represents them. Spend some time journaling, asking, what are some of the heavy patterns that have kept us limited, and let it just flow through you. And then feel into, well, what is the freedom of this? How can I release this? How am I born in this particular time and space to break this cycle, right? Or to transmute it in some way? How do I honor my ancestors in that way? And these
Mhm.
are some of the things. And in terms of legacy, like, what would bring you greatest joy? Like when I close my eyes and breathe, like what bring me greatest joy is to see healers of color making money, making impact, feeling good, not feeling taken advantage of. Latinx people also dealing with their own racism and inner oppression. All that's another day for another time.
Mhm.
And like people not going, well, they didn't suffer as much as me. I know, like honoring that everybody's gone through things and celebrating and trusting ourselves and doing the work and collaborating with each other. And so that's what will
Yeah.
bring me joy. So of course, ask
Mhm.
yourself what will bring you greatest joy, and then try
Mhm.
to create the space for that or call it in with other collaborators.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I've talked about this often. Anytime you feel a hint of jealousy or comparison uh, from somebody else's work or platform, perhaps that's an invitation for you to either collaborate with them or learn from them. And so, my last question, which is my most favorite, is if you can envision yourself as a future ancestor looking back on your life today or that version of yourself who was awakening to their gifts, or maybe that version of Vanessa who was a closeted witch still in that corporate attire, what is it you would say?
I would let her see me and let her feel me and tell her that she has everything within her, that the forces within her surrounding her, moving through her, are greater than she can ever imagine. And that she really needs to just trust and step out, and that she will attract to herself all the people, all the opportunities that are in alignment, to trust her intuition, that it will never go wrong, and that to always turn inward and to turn to her spirits, and know that while there are people who may betray her, people who may do what they do from their own pain and their own harm, that there are also beautiful people that will share the work, collaborate in the work, and that the world is waiting for her because she already has all the soul agreements with these folks and with herself, and that
Mm,
she can have love and a successful sacred legacy, which is what happened.
yes.
And so
And so it is. Yes. Vanessa, where is it that people can go to learn more about you and your medicine?
thebizbruja.com, online on a website, and on Instagram, the Biz Bruja. And then I'm on Twitter, but not so much. Also, the Biz Bruja, and obviously LinkedIn. But the best way is Instagram, really, and my website. So
Mhm. Thank you so much for sharing your medicine, for bringing forth your ancestors, and for just swapping talk stories. I'm so excited to continue this conversation with you. And wow, just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being in integrity. And I cannot imagine like all the ripples that are being made because of the ways you have also given to your students and your community so abundantly.
oh, thank you. Same here, my love. Thank you, thank you, thank you.